Ivan, you guys are ready?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So let's call to order the select board meeting for the town of Hanover, New Hampshire, February 9th, 2026. This is the third of three successive in-depth budget discussions. So thank you for all those who contributed to that effort. Looking at the agenda, are there any agenda items for which select board members wish to report? Seeing none. Public comment, any members of the public who wish to address the select board on topics not already on the agenda? Seeing none. We will go straight to business requiring discussion, the first of which is a presentation by John Dolan of the Capital Improvement Program Committee, chair of the committee. Any introductory remarks here?
I'm grateful that John took on the task of preparing the final report for the capital improvements plan for 2027 through 32. It is a daunting task and it's growing every year. So my thanks and appreciation to the whole committee and to the chair. And with that, I'd ask John to give us an overview with his slide deck.
Thank you very much, John.
Hi, everyone. I'll try to go through things quickly. So stop if there's anything you want to dwell on in particular. I know you've got a lot of other presentations this evening. So first, let me admit we haven't sent you the written report yet because it's the draft. I still have to finalize the draft, and I hope to do that and get that to you later this week. But we do have a presentation, and what I will do tonight is give you an overview of the main takeaways from the report that's coming. And if you go to the first slide in, Rob. And they're pretty simple. First of all, we this year the Capital Improvement Program Committee took a different approach, and we focused on only capital improvement projects, but instead of just in the next fiscal year, we went out 3 years. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. After that review, we identified 6 of 9 projects that we had to review, recommending those for appropriations, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment too. And then finally, we found, as we were going through all this, that there is a lot of money that is on the plan to be spent in the next 6 years, and even in the next 3 years, $47 million in projects and assets are on the list to be procured, and another $27 million in the 3 years after that. And so we'll talk about that and getting ready for it. Next slide. So what we did this year, we focused on just about 11 projects, capital improvement projects, all of which were more than $100,000. I think most were more than $200,000, and several were multi-million-dollar projects. We looked at the ones for which we had proposals. There were out of the 11 that we were focused on, we looked at 9. We didn't have proposals for the other 2, and I'll talk about those in a minute. And even though our review was limited to that set of 11, we covered 55% of the expenditures that are planned for the next 6 years. And that's it. And that total, by the way, is $74 million and change. I'll say more about that in a minute. Just a contrast with what we've done in the last 2 years. Rob, if you could, flip to the next one. If we had followed the same approach we followed in 24 and 25, we would have been looking at more than 11 items on the capital expenditure list. We would have been looking at 20 of them. but they would have only accounted for about 4% of all the spending that's planned. So by changing the focus from asset replacements and focusing more on projects and not just projects next year, but in the next 3 years, we covered almost or more than half of the whole set of expenditures that are planned. Now, next slide. The projects that we had in our sites are the ones that are within that red rectangle on the spreadsheet you see there. We had proposals, as I said before, for 9 of the 11. The 2 for which we didn't have proposals are ones you are no doubt mindful of: the West Wheelock Corridor Improvements Project and the South Main Street Reconstruction Project. And those are coming, but we don't know when yet, and we will be thinking about that. The other 9 projects that we looked at, of those 9, we identified 6 that we felt were ready for prime time in the years when they are scheduled for appropriations. For FY27, which is what you'll be most concerned with this year, there are just 2 capital improvement projects we identified for appropriation that we would support for appropriation. One of them you know pretty well already, I think, the Howell Library building envelope and window upgrade. And then a second one that was, there was a consensus of the committee that it could go forward if you decide, or we would support it going forward if you decide, is a multi-use path on Reservoir Road. When I say we are recommending them for appropriation, what that means is that we determined, if you go to the next slide, Rob, these are the 6 that are being recommended. We determined that after reviewing the plans for each project are well-defined enough for lay people, members of the committee, to understand what they're all about. The cost estimates are current, and that for FY27, the 2 that we're recommending would be appropriate to include in next year's budget. The others that are out in FY28 and FY29, even though we agreed that they are good, would be good for appropriation in the year to come, we'll still check in next year and the year after when their actual scheduled year is up. Now, what we've done is really, it's more than a drop in the bucket, but it's only a small part of the bucket. We've recommended to you $11.5 million worth of capital expenditures over the next 3 years. But that's only a quarter of what's planned for the next 3 years, and it's only 16% of what's planned for the next 6 years. So there's a lot missing from our review. And even though it's missing, there's going to be a need to look ahead and prepare for what needs to be done. Even if we don't have information on everything, we have to think about preparing for it. And as we sit here today, I was just looked at the calendar, and town meeting is only 13 weeks from tomorrow. And in that period, you may be seeing a lot of new information, particularly for 2 big capital projects, West Wheelock and South Main Street. And even if you don't have information today, you need to start thinking about how to prepare for when it arrives. Next slide. So this is an AI-generated photo. It didn't actually happen. But it could happen in the metaphorical sense.
Where are the sharks? I think there should be some sharks in there as well.
I think you should have just got the sky
I
smaller instead of.
think they're on the roof. But this is more, and I just looking back about 10 or 15 years, This is more than the town has spent on capital projects perhaps in this century. And I can't speak for farther back than that, but it's a lot. And 2/3 of it, 2/3 of that 74 million is scheduled to happen in the next 3 years. So, and I guess the main point to make is that 70% of the potential expenditures, we don't have any information for today. We're looking forward to having that and figuring out how to proceed once it comes. But what's going to be needed to prepare for that? Let's go to the next slide. So there are several considerations that I think I'm going to make sure everybody understands in some detail. First, you have in the next 3 years about $41 million of capital projects scheduled, $6.5 million of capital asset replacements. Fully 2/3 of that total, we don't have any detail about. The West Wheelock Corridor, South Main Street Reconstruction Project. But we do know that a certain amount of debt is planned. So there's 31 million that's already been authorized. That was at town meeting in 2023, and 38 million more that is potential. And when I say potential, it's not planned, it's not authorized, but looking ahead at the projects and the assets that have to be acquired, we can anticipate that much is going to have to be financed through borrowing. Second, looking past FY29, the last 3 years of our planning horizon, there's still 21 million of projects and 6 million of capital assets. Now, the good news is that perhaps 19 million of those projects are requests that are dated and should be updated and perhaps reconsidered in some cases. They may not be as powerful a part of that wave that's going to wash over us as the first 3 years. But there will be another tranche of debt required for a fuel storage tank. I think that's somewhere out in FY30 or FY31. And what all that adds up to for the next 6 years is potentially $70 million of new debt for the town. Just to put it in perspective, I think the town's outstanding debt in FY26 is about $3.5 million. And the highest it's been in the last 10 years was $22 million back in 2016. So you're looking at 3 times as much debt as the town has had in recent memory. What's the question that needs to be considered? One question is, what will the impact of $74 million of capital requests be on town finances and resources? Can the town afford to do it all? All of this is planned. It's coming from the running list of projects and asset replacements that the town maintains. And with just the one addition, which is West Wheelock, that's not in the database yet, but I'm sure it will be soon. What are we going to do it all? And can we afford to do it all? And even if we can afford it, should we do it all? If the town is going to do it all, how will it be financed? What are we going to do about new debt? How do we structure it? How do we time it? And do we think about other financing that we traditionally or customarily use, like capital resource funds? Are we going to approach those differently, use those differently in the not too distant future? And then another question that's important is how do you, the select board and town management, prepare residents for this tidal wave of capital expenditures and the price tag that's going to go with it, because borrowing to pay for the projects, funding capital reserve funds, the funds for those have to come from somewhere, and it will be the town's revenues, including tax revenues and ratepayer revenues. So a plan is going to be needed to persuade the residents of the town to go along to agree to many of these projects and these asset acquisitions, even though they are going to be very expensive. And they also, I think they need to feel that it's not just a lot of new spending that's being presented to them and they have to accept it without question. They need to understand all of it and be brought along to see that it's something that they would be invested in themselves. So looking at what's coming, you need not only to be able to make the argument for the necessary investments, but you also need to demonstrate that you're doing everything that's possible to minimize the financial impact on the taxpayers and the ratepayers. We have some recommended actions for that. And these are described in more detail, will be described in more detail in the written report. But I think they start with thinking about everything that actually is planned to be done and asking, does it all need to be done? So a hard look at a list of 160 items for the next 6 years, asking the question, is each one of these something that the town needs to have, or is it something that we could consider nice to have, but not essential right now? And then for every one of the items that is a need to have, can we ask the question, can the proposed scope and features be scaled back to reduce the cost? Even though we need to have it, is there a less expensive way to acquire it? And then if we need to have it and we agree that it's the cost estimate is appropriate, can we do something about the scheduling? Can it be postponed? Can the cost be spread out over more than 1 year? Next is talking about using the undesignated fund balance, which is an important variable in your annual budgeting. And last year, for example, the town was able to put a significant amount, about $1.5 million, into the new capital facilities fund to prepare that. And that was possible because of the surplus in the undesignated fund balance that we enjoyed last year. I think we're recommending that you think about conserving any surpluses that come your way this year, next year, and the year after, because we don't know when, but we do know that the town's going to be taking on new loans, and they're going to be substantial, a lot of them in the next 3 years. And the undesignated fund balance surpluses can be used to help cushion the shock of the increased debt service payments that are going to be required when those loans are taken on. The right way to do it, we don't know precisely, but I think this is something that you would want to consult New Hampshire DRA to find out what the appropriate vehicle for conserving funds for a purpose like that would be. One idea that we thought about is a new capital reserve fund, but perhaps using an existing one as possible, or something else that DRA would recommend. Finally, our third recommended action is educating residents about not just the headline projects that are coming our way, the West Wheelock Corridor and South Main Street, but all of those projects in the capital investment program for the next, at least the next 3 years. So that means there are 9 other projects that need to get the spotlight put on them, not only for this year's town meeting, but for the projects that are coming down the pike. That amounts to about 13 million of projects, and 11.5 of that is going to take place in the next 3 years. So residents need to understand when they hear that West Wheelock and South Main are going to cost $30 million or more, that you need to have, not have them asking the question, why did you spend so much money last year when you knew this was coming or something like this was coming? So planning for it and then advising everybody about what's coming, about all of these projects is going to be critical to, I think, selling them in the short time that you have. The rest of the slides are an appendix, which includes the full list of projects and asset replacements on the list. As I mentioned, it's 160 items long. And then final slide is the graphic showing the use of capital reserve funds over the last 10 years and what's planned for the next 6 years. And I guess one thing to, this will be in the report, but one thing to point out here is that you can see from the how the height and depth of the bars is changing, that the town is already moving into a new phase of capital expenditures. The amount being deposited in the capital expenditure fund, capital reserve funds over the next 6 years is running about 600,000 more on average per year than it did over the last 10 years. And the amount coming out is running about a little over 1 million more per year than it did over the last 10 years. So there's a lot going into the capital reserve funds, and that may be something you have to think about changing to be able to sustain all the other spending that's coming.
Thank you, John. Let me just say up front, Jenny and I sit on the committee, so we've witnessed firsthand a lot of the work, and we'll express our appreciation to you, but other committee members for everything that's gone into this, also staff who participated extensively, and having tools like this, which give us, better reflection on the last 10 years and pulling together a lot of this data is extremely helpful. I've had the benefit of looking at the draft of the report, and I know it will be helpful to the entire select board and community members when we think about this wave of capital spending. So thank you for bringing, and this has evolved from kind of 1 year to 3 years, and the ambition is to get it to 6 years. You mentioned is kind of the statutory.
Right, is the planning horizon. And I think we will endeavor to go farther out in the coming years.
Yeah. I guess one of the things, two things come to mind. One is interesting to see how over that same period of time, 10 years and forecast in the future, how that compares to our tax base or assessed value of our properties and kind of the development that we've seen in the past 10 years and what we anticipate. Like, as all of us, when we drive to Norwich, we look at these, apartment buildings and what's that going to do to our taxes. So like that help pay and some of the other stuff that we know that's happening downtown in terms of housing and taxable income. And then my other question is, or my other thought is that we've had kind of this steady state in the past decade, but we've also learned that we have not necessarily maintained our assets. No offense, guys, but it's as much on the select board and town voters. The last time we touched Main Street significantly and did the Main Street improvements were, I think, 5 decades ago. Roughly, so 50 years ago. And so I guess that's something that I think you make a really good point. We need to communicate and make sure people understand that it's once in a generation that we can tend to our Main Street if we want to continue to have a Main Street. So, I think it's going to cost money and it's not getting cheaper. And, I think it's worth looking into. You know, can you phase it in such a way that it can save money? But a lot of us have worked in this kind of field, and generally when you split it up, it ends up costing more. So I think you're raising some really good points, and it's gonna be tough. We also wanna encourage people to live here and make it easier to afford to live here, so, but thank you.
You're welcome. I think that the main thing is give people time to receive the information, understand it, ask questions, participate in the full definition of the projects. But it will be a very hard sell to just bring tens of $millions worth of projects to the town meeting all at once and say, we think we really need this. Don't you agree? They probably are going to balk.
Yeah. Although those people on Brewster and School Street who didn't have water today.
Are you saying because I had to go around again to get to my home?
We don't have water.
Dashing around
They might feel like.
for my neighbor that wiped out on the ice.
So.
Thank you
I
guys
mean,
for fixing that. It was so
Yeah.
good. It was only a couple hours.
So it's so, it is overwhelming. Not
Aging infrastructure.
aging infrastructure, deferred maintenance.
Sure.
It's just, you know, part of the challenges that we face in terms of balancing what we think we need to have for our communities. But really appreciate you bringing it to our, in this very clear graphic.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know just this chart, you know, last year we were able to establish a new CRF and capture a fair amount of that undesignated fund balance. And just thinking that we had a little bit of a tailwind over the last few years from vacancies, staff vacancies, and maybe even some federal funding. I don't know. It feels like it's been a period where we've had the ability. I guess the question is, will we going forward with zero-based budgeting? It seems like things might be a little totter going forward, but
I will say that the whole purpose of zero-based budgeting is to make it taut. We are approaching full staff, so the buffer that we were seeing before with significant vacancies doesn't exist anymore. And setting aside for a moment the undesignated fund balance, there are needs that need to be addressed, and the question is, how do we approach it in a systematic way that's cost effective?
thank you.
I've got a question if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
It's on you, Jared.
Oh, great. Thanks. Wasn't sure if you could hear me. John, great. This is a great presentation. I really appreciate it. Clear and certainly sends the message for what's coming and you know, the challenges that we're going to face. On this last slide and for your projections into the future, did you account for any of the new development that's planned on West Wheelock or in downtown? You know, we've got, I don't even know how much new development is planned on West Wheelock there, but you know, probably 100 million, 50 million. I don't even know. And then another, we'll call it 10 million or so already planned for Main Street. Does this kind of take into account that increase in tax revenue, or is this just looking at steady state, current state?
This is you should understand, this is not these are capital reserve funds. This is not tax revenue or any other source of revenue. It's the blue bars are the amount that the town is going to put into the capital reserve funds each year, and the red bars are the ones it's going to take out. And every one of those bars is linked in some way to a planned asset replacement. And none of those asset replacements is West Wheelock or South Main Street.
Okay, so the 2.5 million is how are you? I don't understand how you're coming up with that number in terms of deposits into the capital reserve.
So I'm going to turn to Pete for a moment. These are his numbers.
Okay.
So what I do is I look out 10 plus years, what current equipment, buildings, whatever we have for current infrastructure that we know we have, and look at how to balance each reserve. And to do that, based on the draws coming up in the next 5-10 years, recommend appropriation to each reserve, whether it be highway reserve or building reserve or fire fund or ambulance or dispatch or water, wastewater, et cetera. So that's accumulated total of all those different reserves. Some of those are enterprise funds, but that's a total accumulated of everything put together.
And Jared, if you want to know more exactly what all those deposits and withdrawals from the capital reserve funds are slated for, they are listed in the appendix, starting on page 11 through page 13. That's 5 years of asset replacements. Most of the capital reserve fund deposits and withdrawals are aimed at those.
Okay, got it. So if I understand this correctly, this last slide, number 14, the sum at the end of this of 20 or FY32 is 0, right? Because you have deposits into the capital reserve and then you have draws from the capital reserve. So at the end of this,
No, actually,
That's assuming that we ended all of our capital
World ends.
appropriations after that. So
That's
there
when the
is,
world ends.
Yeah.
there is,
Right.
they're accounting for what's coming after next 5, 10, 15 years, so that we have adequate funds, so we're not hit with a big shock, say in year 8, when we have to purchase 7 big, large pieces of equipment that we've anticipated coming. So there may be some of that in there too.
okay.
so average spending for the past 10 years, about 200,000 more has gone into the capital reserve funds than has come out. But for the next 6 years, about 200,000 more per year is going to come out than goes in.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Jared, Pete forecasts out almost 30 years, so he can.
If you want more information, I'm glad.
It's like 60 years. It just
No,
keeps going.
I fully trust, Pete's data and everything. I'm just trying to understand it, just in terms of the ins and outs.
There are
Yeah.
peaks and valleys that relate to certain rolling stock in particular. And I'll use the ambulance, for example. We have an ambulance due for replacement in 28 and then another one due in 29. They're back to back for some reason. Fire department's been asked to push out the 29 replacement at least 1 year, but they're programmed in for replacement and the funding is there for their replacement.
Okay. Gotcha. And Rob, while I've got you, do you have an idea of what the plan development is in terms of new big buildings going up on West Wheelock and downtown?
So I believe that it's easy. I think it's first start with 25 West Wheelock. That's at about 60% completion. And that assumed the estimated value at completion is around 60 million.
Okay.
So, and when I say 60% completion, that's for April 1 of this year.
Okay.
Which will be the fixed date, and 0 value on 37 through, well, no, there's a value, but 0 building value on 37 through 43 as of April 1. But at the completion of the project, we're estimating about $89 to $100 million worth of value in those 2 buildings alone.
Okay.
The Davidson block, it's about 14 million, but we have to deduct the demolition of the back end first. And that
Okay.
number is still being calculated. And then we have some housing renewal on campus that's in the works that will also increase assessed value. The first one coming online this fall, I believe, is the Fairweathers. So that renewal will have an increase in value. And then there's at least 2 more projects on the books that will take off in the next 3 years.
Okay. Because, yeah, I mean, I think it would be, again, this is a great presentation. I think, I don't know who would take this on, maybe me. But looking at the increase in assessed value of the town and what that means in terms of increased tax revenue versus what this would look like in terms of bond payments, if we were to say, whatever, $60 million in bonds, what does that equal? Probably, $4 or $5 million a year in debt service payments. How do we get to $4 or $5 million a year of tax revenue? I don't know that the math works, but I think that's an important consideration here. Is the one of the main reasons why we're looking to do this work on West Wheelock and Main Street is, one, because we have to, because it's aging and we're having all kinds of issues and there's safety issues and et cetera, but also because we're hoping that it's going to increase the value even more of these properties by just creating a much better, more appropriate public right of way.
I do want to make a distinction in the debt that we're talking about. A portion of it is ratepayer debt, and while
Right.
it is a debt that we need to be cognizant of, it's not impacting the taxpayer specifically. Taxpayers are ratepayers, but there's a difference, and the system that we're working under with sewer and water, these improvements are baked into the rates.
Gotcha.
That's about $31 million.
Okay, so out of the 74 that we just discussed, about 30 is ratepayer. Is that right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
Well, and then there's the 8 million water.
Yeah.
So 8 million water.
We included that, yes.
I included it in.
You did, okay.
And that's also built in the rates for today, so we have a loan being paid off.
That's the.
That will be already bonding capacity, you won't even have to change rates for that.
Okay.
And for context too, I'd just like to interject one more data point, and I don't have it exact, but while I do agree with the analysis that our current debt is around 3.2 million, 3.5 million, the payments that we're making, it equate to 20 to 21 million dollars worth of debt. So for instance, for the water fund, although our current balance is, $1.5 million, those started out at 8 million. So I think that's, I'm not dismissing the 74 million is a big wave coming at town hall, but I do think that the comparison to 3.2 million isn't totally correct.
Because of the fixed rate amortization, so it's the same. Bond payment is for a $23 million debt.
Right. When will that be paid off?
Well, it depends. So we've got roughly 3 million rolling off in December of 27. We've got another 900,000 coming off in August of 26, another 4.2 in July of 27. And then again, the parking garage is done January 15th of 2029. So those are the big pieces. I guess there's another 6.5 million for the water fund, which comes off July 1st of 27.
Ellen, just looking at rough math, is like 20-year payback, and right now at about 4.5%, or I'm sorry, maybe lower than that. Interest, is that kind of normal for municipal bonds like this?
So it depends on the, of course, useful life of the asset that we're purchasing.
Okay.
In my experience, I believe that if we're using the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank, they go to 30 years. I believe that for the SRF loans, they're 20.
They can be long, but typically 20.
They can go.
Typically they go 20 because we want to be able to use them again.
And turn them. So,
Okay.
yeah, and the SRF loans tend to be lower than,
A point or two. Sometimes.
yes, yeah. And again, in the January issuance, there weren't any 30-year bonds. In July, the 30-year bonds were at 4.87, but all of the rates of the issues that were in January were 0.5% lower than the July rates, maybe even a little bit more.
Okay.
Can I come back to Rob's comment about fully baked into the rate? Use, Pete, since you're here, you would just elaborate a little bit. I know we're going to talk about these
So
enterprises.
in the sewer rate, we have some existing debt that we've appropriated the amount to finish paying that off, and we have a bond that will start payments due 2029, FY29, and the other ones will drop off. So there's already capacity built into the rates. We are having to increase that rate slightly to reach that, so we don't have a big bump in rates there. In the water side, we have the loan that Ellen talked about for the water treatment plant that rolls off next year, and then the work that's being done right now will be done. When is it going to be done? This fall, or? So we have a year.
Yes.
So it's a year after substantial completion. So if we finish and say after July 1st, say it's July 2nd, I know it's something in the fall, but it'll be the following fiscal year that first payment will hit us. And it's one payment a year. It's always based on when you're after completion. So the plan on that is that we were hoping to request appropriation for another phase of the project this is the first phase we're looking at now. And then once those are roll off 20 years out, it would be the same sort of thing, trying to do the similar thing where you already have those capacity to borrow built into your rates without having to bump your rates. That's the overall long-term plan. Unless that changes 40 years from now, which I don't care. You probably won't either.
Thank you, Pete. Anything else for John or anything else on this topic?
Thank you.
John. No. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good luck.
You telling them or me?
You too.
So,
Carrie, I would love to just, and again, I'm happy to do this, but have a better understanding of kind of all the things that Ellen said, but I couldn't write down quick enough, of what debt is falling off, what's coming up, to see, to be able to create a similar chart to this last one to see, what's really going to be going out and coming in, again, in addition to additional tax revenue over the course of the next, we'll say 20 years, to be able to see what the actual impact is going to be to the taxpayer.
yeah, thank you, Joe. You know what? Let's follow up offline and.
Sure, and
Okay.
Once we're done with the presentations, I have a list of next steps. And one of those next steps is a deep look at our debt. We'll map out all the different loans that we currently have. You'll be able to see when they fall off. And so I think, from a visual standpoint, it'll be a little bit more clear.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, John.
Right, don't need to go anywhere. Thank you.
The gang's all here. Thanks for being here, guys.
So let me introduce who we got here. Christina Hall, Deputy Director. Jim Craig, who's head of Highway and Utilities. Wesley Ullman, he's the head of our fleet. And Sean Douglas is head of our facilities. We have a few other people, but they weren't in today, so they're not here.
Well, welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming.
So, next slide.
All right.
This is just a recap of what we do. So, next slide. If you want to read the detail, it's a lot of things. This is kind of a high level, this is how we kind of organize ourselves, and who kind of works under who and what area. And then, next slide. Go into just the administration, how it breaks down, how the kind of chart of who's working under who and what capacity. These are straight lines, but the lines connect everybody. It's a spider web. We all work quite closely together, and sometimes I work directly with somebody and Christina won't, and other times she'll work closely with them and I won't. So it's not a straight line. And that's on purpose. We can cross work quite a bit. So that's makes us way more efficient and able to get along a little better and get more things done. Moving on to highway and utilities, list of all our staff, current staff. We have one vacancy today for a utility technician. That's one that's been tough to fill. It's been vacant for a while. We have an interview next week or the week after. Wednesday.
Next.
Yeah, so maybe we fill that one, maybe not. Moving on, next slide. Our fleet division, we have a senior mechanic and 2 mechanics, one's part-time. Larry Holmes has been here for quite a while. He retired, came back part-time. He's retiring again, for good, he says. So sometime April 2nd. Didn't want to do April 1st because we wouldn't believe him if he said that. So we will be filling that position with a full-time position prior to the fiscal year starting, but that will go for another position, which was his position prior to me going part-time. Facilities, Sean, we got another technician that works on all of the facilities. You probably see Nick around, some of you have. Then we have our custodians. We have 3 custodians, a head custodian and 2 custodians. They go through all the buildings and cover quite a ground. Going into a little bit more detail, I'm not going to cover it in the next slide, please. Water treatment, this is just, we've broken our treatment into 2 divisions, water treatment, wastewater treatment, and we have a utility division. So these are the people who do exclusively treatment most of the time. Not all the time, because if there's a water main break, Dylan and Wyatt will be out there as well. If there's water meter needs to be replaced, they're doing that too. So there's not just siloed work. They do work across the areas. Water reclamation is really, they stay pretty much in their world because their world is very complicated. We have our lab technician is retiring in 2 weeks. It's actually his last day in the office was last Thursday. So we have a position opening there. So we'll have to fill a position. There may be some movement within the division, people moving around and applying for a different position. So there could be some movement of names in different areas, but there will be another position that will be vacant. That'll be another one that'll be difficult to fill because it's a very specialized skill set and takes quite a bit of training.
How long has Richard been there?
Water reclamation.
Almost 18 years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So our goals are not quite as lofty as maybe some other divisions. We want to implement our work order system. It's something we've been trying to work on for several years, but now we have a new group of people. We've been on training. We've been rolling it out to different divisions. The buildings division first, so we can actually start looking at our assets, maintenance, and track our time and try to get a better sense of how to handle routine repairs and get ahead of some of these things. With a younger staff, and particularly in our highway division, we will spend more time with maintenance than capital work, only because they need to be trained. And we have a lot of maintenance work that we need to be on top of. That doesn't mean we won't do some, it just we need a little bit more time in that. Next slide. This is an overall of the whole DPW excluding the utility funds, water and sewer. Showing our overall budget, you see it's down from last year. By and large, that has to do with capital changes You can see this, most of it down is an operational change, and that was actually a capital project built into the operational budget, it was more of the study for the drainage, was built into the operating budget rather than the capital. So that's why the math doesn't quite work out that way. Next slide. This is a little bit more deep dive into the administrative area. This is the area that deals with essentially any of the engineering, all the administration of all the other divisions, any studies that we may do, our recycling program is in this division, those sort of things are all in this area. And that drop in that is actually reducing, I just mentioned the drainage study being pulled out of this fiscal year, last fiscal year's work.
It just asks, the drainage study is not the stormwater.
Yes, that's a stormwater,
Okay,
yes.
so that's
Yes.
pushed out.
No, it's funded now.
It's fine now.
We're not doing any asking for next year, then the following year we would be asking for the next phase. So we've got the work to do.
Yep.
We won't be done. We in fact haven't even started, so we don't want to ask for more money until we get some work done.
Got it. Thank you.
So I've listed some of the items that have seen some significant increases, just to see if you can look through the budget, you can see some items that several others, but they're fairly small dollars. These are some of the larger ones. The first one is the charges from IT. There's some shifting of where those charges were from. They were originally, a lot of them were in, they were software that was based on a phone service that was covered under the building phone item. So they were moved to one place. It makes more sense. So that's what that essentially is. Moving, you can see the stormwater study that shows that decrease right there, that 91,500 down to 3,500. That's that big change. The next one is the clothing. Previously, we were back charging each fund for the clothing allowances for each person. Now we're just charging where they were. And it's gone over the years, it's gone back and forth, but it makes more sense to charge it to where the person works rather than charging one place. So that's why that went down. Dues memberships. One big thing is we're doing in-house training of CDLs. We were budgeting, sending people out about $9,000 per person. We're doing it in-house for about $150 a month. Is that what that would pay roughly? $175 for a rental of a trailer, so we can get, we have to rent a box trailer so they can get permitted to operate that type of equipment. So quite a bit of savings there. Still working on the recycling, I suspect. Hopefully this year we'll have some progress. I'm not sure it's going to make us happy. I was hoping to have some more help on this. I'm looking for the sustainability coordinator to come on board to help me on this one. I'm not really confident we're going to see a lot of change, only because there's one option, and either we do it ourselves or they do it, and I'm not sure we're going to find a better deal.
Is our contract up?
Our contract was up last year. We asked for a 1-year extension. We'll ask for another year extension. They're more than happy to do that. They'd like to have it locked in, but it's like either we get another year or we do nothing. So they'll take another year. And the other thing is solid waste. Just to point out, the solid waste charges, you're going to see this in other departments, other building department, also water, not so much water, but sewer. The rates at the landfill have gone up substantially. So there's a bump in that. So those are the significant ones in that area. Next slide. Moving on to highway. You can take a look real quick. There's the big bump is the capital. There's some minor reduction in operations. Wages are up. That's basically the COLAs and benefit package. No new staff. It's just any cost of living and merit steps. And then the next slide will show where those changes are. One big jump is, this is something that was in the capital plan or that John presented. The MUP is in here. The price that's in the plan that was submitted to John is $495,000. That's including staff time and equipment. The actual cost is $295,000, and a portion of that, $114,200, would come out of the municipal transportation reserve. So the balance would come out of fund balance or, which I think is where the drainage came out of last year, right? So we come out of the same bottom line.
Did you say it's the self-perform?
Excuse me?
How much is the self-perform, did you say?
It's $495 for everything, but the out of pocket is $295.
But so MUP that I thought we were gonna do were trail. What's Grove?
This is different. This is from
This is like
Lime
from
Road to
Safe Routes to School 100
Yes.
years ago.
yes, this is part of that.
So, and that was brought to the committee from Bike Walk Committee?
That was programmed in their capital plan. It's been in that plan for
Yes, since
15
2012 when we
years.
did it.
Yeah, almost 15 years, 14 years.
I was on that.
So it's a little bit different than what was proposed with input from them. It was originally going to be a path all the way to the school with no crossings of the road. With road crossings, 2 road crossings with rapid flashes, things to slow people down at those crossings. And it will be paved to the first crossing, and then it'll be gravel beyond that so that it won't interfere with Fort Sayers program, because that's part of their route further down. So that's a little bit different than we originally proposed. Moving on to highway maintenance, we have bumped that up a little, oops, stay on that same slide. We bumped that up about $10,000 for additional guardrails. One of the issues is when we go to do a guardrail package, if we don't get enough, we don't get any. You have to get a certain size, otherwise the mobilization is almost as much as the work. This gives us an ability to get several hundred feet versus 100 feet. So you can get substantially more by a little bit more money in that. The other items, paving, reclaim, gravel materials, those are really the price increases we're seeing. Questions on that? Okay, moving on. This is utilities. So this was a little complicated because up until, was it this morning? Yes, this morning at 9:30 this morning, at 9:15, we were still trying to figure out how to present this in a way that could be understood. So what we have is the utility division is made up of two employees that are funded by the sewer fund and 2 employees that are funded by the water fund. They work together, and FY26, 2 of those employees back charge from the general fund to the sewer fund, but the other 2 are charged directly to the water fund. So it made it complicated because we get into overtime because they also do the sidewalk maintenance. So any overtime, we had to make sure we weren't charging enterprise funds when it's actually a general fund, which has been a problem the past several years. So what we've done, working with Alan, came up with a better strategy, is we took the 2 from each division, put them together, divided in half. They get charged directly to each fund. They don't get charged to the general fund at all. The only thing that gets charged to the general fund is the overtime related to winter maintenance. So that's why the personnel cost is $19,244. That's sidewalk maintenance. Previous one is sidewalk maintenance plus sewer maintenance, water maintenance, and the wages for 2 line maintenance or sewer employees. And it also got more complicated too because we have another employee at a water facility who also does sidewalk maintenance. So it got pretty complicated. But this way makes it a little simpler. So the back charges drop. The personnel costs drop because those back charges are now charged through. For the operation costs, I'll go over that a little bit further down. So the overall decrease, as you can see, the total is way less than the total of everything below it because they're offsetting costs. So the overall costs have gone down. The operation's gone up for a few things. We'll get into that in the next slide.
Did we agree to split the employees 50-50?
Yes.
So previously, the way it was structured was you had 2 for sewer, 2 for water. So if you had a vacancy in water, the enterprise fund benefited, if you will, because they weren't paying that salary. This way, everybody's treated 50-50, splits across the board.
So if they don't,
I think that's right.
yes, that was a simple explanation. Because we do have one opening right now, and the person is a sewer person who's being, the general fund's benefiting, but the sewer fund is paying for a position that's not filled. So that straightens that out. Moving on to the next slide. You can see the charges of the water fund are only, because the water fund was only the materials and supplies and equipment we used to charge. We didn't charge any wages, so it was the reduction, you wouldn't see as large a reduction. In fact, you see an increase because of material cost increases. You can see the utility full-time services go to zero because that's no longer charged to the general fund. The overtime wages drop because the difference is what is related to sewer or sewer overtime. The water's charged, always been charged directly to water, so that never was an issue. Then we get into some of the increases, emergency repair costs. These are just some of the new quotes we're getting. Prices are going up. We have a little bit reduction in some of the construction just because of the streets we're paving. There's fewer overtime and fewer materials related to raising structures. We are increasing the amount of slip lining of our sewer collection system. That's partly, price is partly increased, but also we have to do it in segments. So if we have to do manhole to manhole. And if it's 300 feet, it's one price, and if 400 feet, it's another price. So we've targeted certain streets, certain areas. So this is what that represents. Sewer drain pipe slip lining is something we've just started to look into. It's included in the utilities, even though it's actually managed by highway. Jim manages that, but it's charged because it's a utility. It's charged through that same area of the budget, but it stays in the general fund. It's for slip lining drain pipes rather than digging roads up. And we have one in particular that we're working on Mulholland, but we have some others that they're in areas where you can slip line the pipe for a few $1,000s, or you can dig it up for tens of thousands of dollars because you have other utilities, you have all kinds of other things to deal with. So sometimes you can do that. Well, you can do that. It's far cheaper, particularly in the downtown, if we can slip line areas. We've done a lot of slip line and sewer rather than digging it up and replacing. So that is a technique that saves a considerable amount of money. It only works if the lines are big enough. So in some areas, the pipes are not large enough for the flows today. So slip lining doesn't necessarily solve your problem. It can help some because the type of materials have a lower hydraulic friction. So you can actually get more flow in the same size or even potentially slightly smaller pipe because the friction factors are lower. So there's some.
That's a lot of information.
Yes,
for-
yeah.
It's just looking up the hydraulic.
Spends all
Alex has pictures, so.
Yes.
Big, really cool. I've been learning
We're
about
doing some, when are they doing the next slip line, Jim? Are they doing it today or are they chicken again? Yeah, they're trying to do a slip line a section. Every time they schedule it, the temperature goes below zero. So tell them to stop scheduling. They've done it 3 times. Moving on to fleet. You can see there's personnel costs is up. That's the full-time position and going from the part-time to full-time. Operational costs up slightly, and capital costs down slightly. So overall, slightly down from the previous year. Next slide. The salary increase. Then moving on to the outside repairs for parking. If they have an accident, it's $1,000 deductible. I'm surprised they haven't used it already, so we plug in enough money because it will happen. We have some increased vendor expenses in some of our contracted services, so that's an increase. We've seen increases you can see some increases in fuel usage and some decreases. So the increases in fuel uses, park and rec, more traveling through fields, more areas that they're covering. The fuel for police, they have additional vehicles that are traveling more. DPW, we have no large projects. So we see a reduction. We don't have a big capital project we're doing in a particular area. So there's a reduction in our consumption. Fire and ambulance, you'll see the call volumes up. Wastewater, we're finding that we just did not have enough money budgeted for that. And then the utility water has gone down as well. We do bid our prices for our diesel and unleaded. We bid them out. We've already got locked in prices for 18 months out, which is something we try to make sure fix those costs so we feel comfortable going into budgeting, knowing that those numbers are good and those numbers are fixed pricing. So we have some good numbers for that.
Great.
Moving on to facilities. As you can see, the operational cost, the big drop in that is last year we had the additional appropriation to the reserves. That's the big difference between this, the biggest part of that. So capital items, you see the big drop from reserve for that's essentially the how upgrade windows and siding. Moving on. Got a little bit of detail here. I'm not gonna go through each one. You can look at them. Because the increase in wages. That one-time appropriation for reserve, that's a big one. We have one thing, we have a traffic signal. There's a location, Lime and Park, where we have a lot of near misses with pedestrians. People turning right when there's a walk signal. I can't see a pedestrian, so we've had a number of requests for the signs there that just aren't effective. This is a sign similar to the one that's at the corner of Collis by across from the inn on that corner, so that you can't turn right when that's red. So that's the same sort of sign.
Is that northbound?
Yes, yes.
Hey, go ahead. Pardon me, your fourth line there. Did we upgrade a couple in the last budget? Why is there such a huge drop in electricity for the street lighting?
That's because we had to budget until the Liberty gave us the right tariff.
Okay.
For what we actually use. And the actual consumption is substantially less, but it's also, we don't have to pay for their recovery costs of their assets. So that's the total cost of a bill would be, previously a bill would be about $6,700 a month. Now it's about just under $1,000. And that's because we own the lights and we just pay for electricity. So that's the big drop there.
Thank you.
That offsets a lot of other places where the electricity goes up. Not completely, but it does offset some of that. The next piece is we have a mid-block crossing. We had not budgeted for it. I do have things from the state. I haven't had a chance to submit my final permit to them, but that plan is to do something in the spring, early summer, get that crossing.
Excellent.
That's the plan. It took several months to get them to respond to my application, which now they have. Now it's in my ballpark. Let's moving on. We had the bumps from our sewer and water charges were under realized. We were actually using more water and charging more sewer in the buildings, so we've increased those to match actual usages. You can see the telephone charges have went down for town hall because some of those charges were now being charged to the MIS budget and the admin budget. Then looking at rate increases, some of these were estimates based because we couldn't get real data from Liberty. We now have a year's worth of data. We can actually see what we actually use in buildings. And we actually have some much better sense of what the costs are going to be. The rates are going up 15%. Right now the rates are really through the roof. The cold weathers, a lot of the utilities have not planned for this, but this is the rates that we're expecting. And that's pretty much across the board for most of our facilities. Moving down.
So sorry,
Yes.
Just because there's so much noise in the various buildings.
Yes.
This one's up 100%. So is that before you were just paying for the entirety, now you're getting building specific information?
So previously we had wrong bills. And we were trying to get actual data and trying to map what we use for energy and then how much the rates are going to cost us. And it's really difficult to tell how much is going to increase in a building if you don't have the actual kilowatt consumption. And we were getting misinformation. We have our own meters now, we can verify it. So we have actually much better data. So that's a big piece of this. We're also collectively charging the We have 3 PPAs, power purchase agreements. They were collectively charging everybody. Now they're being charged the buildings that actually use them. So we have one on DPW, we have one on police and fire. We have one on water, and we have one that's a group net meter that covers the water reclamation, RW Black, and the our library. So you get a portion of the bills offset by the generation, so you get those costs and some offset. So there's a lot of things moving pieces. I'm trying to simplify it so whoever takes over from me can understand it, because I've been doing it long enough that I understand where it goes, but it's been very difficult to get real information. Now we have good information.
And we can do a summary across all of this.
Yes.
We'll do a summary of the utilities, including electricity.
Okay, so some of those you'll see, in some years we have, our consumption of electricity went up, but our consumption of fuel oil went down because we're using more heat pumps. So there's a trade-off in that. So one goes up, the other goes down. Doesn't always work perfectly, but, and if a facility is used differently year over year, it's hard to account for all that detail, but some of that's the case.
Where you have an extremely cold winter.
Yeah, so for instance, I was dealing with this with CPC&H because I'm the chair of the risk committee. This last month and a half have been pretty difficult trying to meet we set a rate. We had consumption numbers. Well, the amount if people just use what they were supposed to, they'd be cold. So they went above that, but we're obligated to provide that delta at the lower rate. Well, the rate is 3 times what we had budgeted. So you have these big bumps, which you have to try to figure out how to spread out. That's some of this, why the shock is a little bit. One of the big reasons the rates are up is to rebuild reserves. And that's CPC&H trying to rebuild their reserves so that they have enough funding so that they can weather these sort of storms, but also move the operation so it can do essentially what I was doing with the town for 10 years is be a wholesale power purchaser, cheaper rates, more complicated, way more complicated, but you can save money. And that's the ultimate goal. That's part of why the rates are up. Moving down to some of the repair, I'm just going to hit some of the repairs. Let's see, we have fire alarm at DPW, old fire alarm that's failing. I'll cover a little bit further down. That's one bump for that. It's down somewhat because we had some more work. We had a furnace at one of our equipment garage replaced this year. So it's less than that. So that's why that's down a little bit. And shed 2, which is out on Greensboro Road, has single pane windows. Heat goes right out the window. I mean, it's just a piece of glass, so it's losing lots of energy. So we're replacing those windows. Next slide. Some more information on water and sewer, telephone, these are all those sort of things. Electricity, heating oil, building capital maintenance, Howe Library, this is the
Love that
siding.
1,831%.
That's the siding windows, and
I know.
that's the siding windows on the old half of the building. That's not the whole building.
It's only half of the old half of the building.
No, it's the whole old half,
Except for the merged wall.
except for that part, yes. That wall is gone, yes.
Okay.
So we're not replacing that wall. So that's the big bump there. It also has a fire alarm system that needs to be upgraded.
Yeah.
And
It's important.
you'll see that theme in a bunch of buildings. We have a bunch of them that they are unserviceable. You can't find parts for them, so that's a problem. Increase in the telephone charges of the monitoring system, fire alarm monitoring for it in the library, which didn't have one. So it didn't have a fire alarm, didn't have panic alarms, now it does. It's just the cost of it. You can see the heat pumps. That's what I was talking about, the heat pumps, cut the oil consumption down. This is a small building, but you can see it can have real results. Sewers up, water and sewer, obviously those are actual numbers. And then moving on to repairs, it's a mini split and the IT room for the communications, which is critical for their equipment, that needs to be replaced. And they also have alarms that need to be upgraded. And that's the same thing with PPA costs and consumptions and the cooling. This is the last one is currently there's some other The current budget has some control work that's being done. It's fiscal year, it won't be done next year, but there's some cooling system drain pan and roof siding repairs that are necessary in that building. So that's what those things are.
I have a random question about the heat pumps.
Sure.
Like, just take this building, for example. So you still have steam
Yes.
radiators and heat pumps. Do these work at all?
Yes.
So
So
you
when
run
it's
them when it's
like
super cold?
this morning, when it's really, really cold.
Yep.
The heat pumps are very inefficient. So the heating load can be taken up by the furnace.
So is that automated or do you,
It is,
Sean?
should be.
Sean's the automated.
Right now, it's controlled by the person.
Yeah.
The oil is automated, so when it goes below a certain temp, it does kick on. And these cold nights, cold days, weeks, months, we use a lot of oil. But they do definitely kick on. We have to reconnect Rob's in his office since we disconnected it for him.
So it's like
Did
the
you wear a
coefficient
sweater?
of efficiency or whatever that thing is, it's like, is it like 32 or is it well below?
It's okay until you get in the single digits and below, then it's
Efficient.
like just, you get some heat out of
It's
it.
just electric heat.
Yeah, at that point, it's very inefficient.
Electric system.
Yeah.
Right, so
Okay,
it's belts and suspenders. We want to back, all our buildings have a second heating source just because of that.
And not to, we had an experience when we ran out of fuel.
Yes, because we use it so infrequently.
So we usually fill up once a year. And that's usually in April. But we've gone through a tank and a half now, just because of the cold weather snap.
Same at my house. That's why I was asking. I called and like, I'm below an eighth of a tank. When are you gonna be in the neighborhood? Okay, thanks. I was just wondering if these actually still works.
Okay, moving on. Next slide. Here's a personnel cost. We have 24 general, break it down to general fund and utility fund, just so you can see the overall. That's 24 general fund employees, 4.5. Christina's 2 halves of a person. So she's charged directly to the water fund and directly to the sewer fund. That's her role as responsible. Well, I'm actually divided three ways, so I'm in thirds, but I just put myself as one. So it's equivalent to 37 people. Right now we have 2 grant funded. We'll have 1. Maybe we can get 2, but these are all funded interns. We've had some college students that help us out, and we actually have 1 right now. In the past, we've had others doing some of our lead service data collection, but also doing asset management, doing all the legwork and putting all that stuff together. So they're all grant funded, so they don't have an impact to the budgets. I put in that we're going to move that 1 part-time person to full-time. It's actually happening this fiscal year, but that's and then realigning how the funds are charged so that they're clean now. We're not charged through the general fund, they're charged directly to those funds. And next slide. Going into capitals, so capital reserve draws for these are highway with brine equipment, fleet service truck, the road lasers and mowers, truck 13, which is one of our plow trucks, and the truck 2 is actually the truck that actually houses the line painters. So those are the things that we're looking to replace this year out of our highway fleet. Next slide. We have 1 thing out of our road truck reserve. This is the control cabinet and signals. It's actually the controller and the camera for this intersection down here, which by the way is not working right now because the camera's fried. So we need to replace it. But what we do is every 10 years, we replace the camera, everything inside the cabinet. Every 5 years, we replace the computerized equipment in the cabinet. It has a 5-year life. So we'll see down in 5 years, there'll be another draw from this, but it'll be much smaller number, in the 25,000 range. This is the Reservoir Road, and this is the draw from the reserve, the 114,200 for the Reservoir Road MUP. And the other costs could be drawn from fund balance. That's the 295. Next slide. I get into some of the building. Some of these are drawn out of the reserve. There's only 1 thing drawn out of the reserve. That's the siding, the 923,365. Everything else is operating budget. Fire alarm system there is also failing. There's the PD cooling system and drain, the roof I talked about. Public Works, we have the same thing. We have the same sort of alarm that doesn't work all the time. Well, it works, but you can't silence it. So it's kind of annoying when it goes off by mistake. Sure it is. And we have a door that to our cold storage that is corroded. That's where all our brine is made and things. So it's corroded, so it needs to be replaced. And then the fire alarm system here also needs to be upgraded. Moving on. So key challenges. I mean, this is something that we have a few items, not just me retiring in the next few years. So we're trying to extract as much information and put things in the right place so that we have continuity for future generations. Part of it that's done through the work order software. We have it's called Lumen. It's a work order, a CMMS, computerized maintenance management system. Tracks parts, tracks how much time it takes, preventive maintenance, those sort of things. Other records as well. So part of what we're doing is updating our GIS as we go, as we find more information, trying to extract what people have in their heads on what is where. I'm not sure they're going to get everything out of my head, so I'm trying to make sure I get as much out as now as possible.
What's the date, Pete?
I've dropped off that. So 1,057 or something like that. But I'm not counting. And that's fine. And that's.
Do we actually have a person that could do GIS?
We have a person who is actually a head of our utility group who actually has a master's in GIS. So
Great.
kind of stuck in there. So she doesn't have a lot of time though. That's the only problem. We have to really find time for her to do these sort of things. And when it's a busy season, no GIS stuff gets done. So we have to work around that. But we do have at least somebody. And hopefully she could spend more time if she had more time available to spend. And part of that is being down on staff has been an issue. And I think once we're fully staffed, the staff is trained more, I think we'll have, we'll find that she may have a little bit. That could be down the road. Okay. Any other questions? These are the details. Any questions on the revenues? It's so small I can't see it.
You just on the revenues, the highway block grant, I think is same number as last year. Are you feeling confident on
No.
that? No. Okay.
That's the best answer I can get. It's like, we don't anticipate changes, which means they have no clue what it's gonna be.
And
It's not on the same program as other, it's based on road miles and federal dollars and it's hard to predict, and gas receipts and that sort of thing.
Department of College revenues,
We have it in there. We do, where it tends to be is in obstruction permits and excavation permits. We don't have a lot of other revenues that we bring in funds for. We don't bring in a lot of money. We spend the money, but we don't bring a lot of it in, except for the utility funds. So it's most of it is in excavation permits, those sort of inspections, but there's not a lot of other funds from them.
okay, thank you. Other questions? Pete, on the details or the big picture of?
I have a big, like, just a big picture question of where, like, you moved the project for phase 2 into the capital budget, like, so that we'd have that as a planning project. And you guys have clearly done work on designing the reservoir multi-use path with the crossings.
We have concepts. We
Or
haven't done design.
concepts, yeah. So I guess where is the planning dollars for those? Are they kind of just baked into the
Those, well,
budget, or do they need to be identified as separate plans?
so what we will do is I will develop a physical plan to review with the committees, so they can see what it is in the schools, to see what we're envisioning, as well as Dartmouth, because some of that's on their property. That's this extent of it. We're not hiring a consultant to come in and design something for us. We'll do the design, we'll do the construction based on a concept that,
Basically a design build.
yes.
I think Jenny's question more is there adequate money in the budget to do the planning for the projects that are coming down the pipe? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Beyond
yeah.
that?
That's like the bigger picture, like that was the one that was,
That one is got a concept,
mentioned,
so
but
other
then
things.
there are other things too, and are we, planning to plan, basically, have we allocated funds?
No, we haven't.
Okay,
So we need to think about, for instance, we talked about, there's a proposal to go to Sachem. I just have a vague idea that something goes that way, but no, beyond that, there hasn't been any planning, no planning money or no plans actually developed. So that's something that we need to start coming up with, at least, is it a real project? From that, I think we can then make a proposal to the CIP committee and say, this is a plan, this is the planning money we need to at least study what the project could become. Likely, the part of the problem is that we won't be able to give full cost because we'll only know, until we have the plan done, we won't know what the magnitude of cost of construction is. So it will probably come in two phases. But that's something that we have not done yet.
So I think the broader answer is Pete and I should meet to discuss, whether or not there should be seed money on an annual basis to do planning and how we bake it into the system.
And how does it connect with the town's master plan? Because there's a whole section on mobility in there.
Right.
And like, where does it fit into the big picture? Like,
He'll bring Jen into
There's-
the discussion as well, and
yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of implementing that stuff. And kind of where does it fit in relative to the other priorities?
right, there's concepts and priorities. And
Great, should we move on to water?
Water utility.
Yes.
Moving on to water.
Should we skip water and do it? Because I'm looking at the people in the audience. Oh, like, should we jump to?
No, we'll put it up.
Okay, I'm just like, these guys have been probably going to work at 7, right?
Wesley's already gone through his area, so if he would like to leave,
We all rode together.
Okay,
So-
yeah, well, I was just trying to be
Christina wrote
kind,
me too,
guys.
so she's staying.
There's food. Did you eat some food?
Yes,
Yeah?
they came early, so.
Okay, good.
Take some food.
Yes. All right, so moving on to the water utility. Treatment and distribution is what they do. Making sure we actually have safe, reliable drinking water via faucet, including metering and everything. So that's their core function. And then one of the things we are striving to do is to provide additional training for our staff, but also the public, what we do, why we do what we do, and make sure that we have adequate fire protection, which is something that often is overlooked when you talk about water treatment. Because we are the provider of water for a fire. So we have to make sure those function the way they need to. So
Is it treated?
it's all treated. It's all one system. It's not separate systems. We do.
Cities do separate systems?
There are some areas where they use gray water for firefighting, but untreated.
No, I was just thinking it would just pull it from the reservoir and not go through the.
Probably be a separate,
Osmosis.
you'd have to have a separate
Separate system.
system,
Okay.
and that would be duplicate.
like a scooper, that's
Yeah.
what we did in LA, big helicopter come and
Yeah,
scoop
We're not-
up
we're not looking for a
scoop up the
helicopter.
drinking water to like,
we'll just provide the
Nobody's
water, someone else can
house.
buy it.
Yeah, no,
Guidance on Trescott. Third reservoir, the second reservoir.
Yes, that's a untreated.
untreated,
Yes, untreated.
is that just one?
There's two of them.
Two
There's
of them?
one right at Sawsville and there's one on the side of the road.
Just wondering about those.
That,
But don't drink from that fire hose.
well, you
Yeah.
shouldn't be opening that fire hydrant anyway.
anyway.
Next slide. Staff, Dylan and Wyatt spend most of their time at the treatment plant. Like I said, they also do meter replacements on Wednesdays, and they also assist in when there's a water main break. And they will do taps and things too. So they're involved with the other part of the crew, just in the water side. They don't get into the sewer collection system.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you guys.
Hey, guys.
It's a pretty good mission. Clean drinking water and fire protection, and reliable. So Christina had a whole list of things. I said, you really gonna get all these things done this year? I said, maybe we should pare it down to stuff we actually can finish. She was going to update the water details and specification. And there's one thing that we have to do that we haven't done is we do not have a water ordinance. We are operating under the Hanover Water Works Company ordinance, which is approved by the PUC back in 2000. So we need to adopt, we have a draft. It just never had a chance to bring it to the board. So we have to bring that to you.
What does it say?
It's just.
Basically, it sets the rules. So like, what you charge and why we do certain things and the standards we use. If there's a dispute, how you handle disputes, those sort of things. It's fairly standard. If you look at the wastewater ordinance, it's way more complex because it deals with the chemicals and everything. This is just simply fewer items, but there's some tricky things. Like for instance, how do we deal with lead in our system? It's not ours on our side. It's on the customer side. There's no requirement for us to do it, but there's a requirement that gets done. It's not our responsibility, but it's how do we encourage people to do it and how do we make sure that happens? So there's some things like that need to happen, but most of it's just making sure that the rules are followed. We're using a set of rules that we've used since 2000. So they're not our rules out, but
For the water company.
a lot of companies, it doesn't exist anymore rules.
Yeah. So it's
Should we
just like
plan
a
on-
search and replace, isn't it?
Oh, well, we have
And
draft.
update.
We just haven't
Yeah.
brought it forward. We just have to make sure every time
Can we put that on our
Yeah.
OKRs? It sounds like an easy win.
That's probably something that you could, it's already done the work.
Yeah, it's already done.
Put it on
Let's
for
add
next
that,
year.
yeah. So we can do it July 1.
Yes, yes, don't worry. We have to look at it again.
Warrant goes into effect July 1.
So we have a few capital items to get this year. We have some compressors and treatment modules and a couple pressure reducing valve we want to get replaced. Some upgrades in a SCADA system, one of our pump stations. Continued overseeing phase one of the water upgrade. Christina's done a lion's share of that. She's taken a lot of that workload. I'm glad she's here doing that. I don't really have time. And she doesn't have a lot of time just doing that. So did an awesome job doing that. We have second phase will be rope ferry, part of Ockham Pond, Ockham Ridge Road, and some potentially on Brockway, depending on how, depending on where the dollars fall. So, and then once that work is done, those areas will be overlaid. So we'll get some base materials down, and then we'll overlay those when we're done. Yes, that's right, North Balchin Parkway, for the next, this spring into summer. And so that will be done this calendar year. We have another tank, which was appropriated funding for this year. We'll be bidding it. It has to be sandblasted for lead abatement. The lead fortunately is not on the inside, it's on the outside, but still has to be removed back to bare metal, both inside and out, and then painted.
Go ahead. There's enough.
Move on. Next slide.
Thank
Others movie.
You can see a reduction is basically the capital going down. We have some operational costs going down, those up. That's, we'll go into the detail of that. Personnel costs are wage and benefit increases. The big drop is obviously capital cost reduction is why the budget's down. Moving on to the next slide. Charges from admin, full-time salary, those are increases that are payroll and benefit increases. And this is the OT, a portion was charged to the utility. Portion of what, because we split the utility fund in half and the overtime is split in half, it's moved between two different areas, so slightly increased there. You can see the workers' comp insurance was previously back charged from the general fund, so we charge directly there. Liability insurance, that's increase in our cost. Chemical costs, a lot of that's due to tariffs still. We're still seeing that effect, and these aren't just new tariffs. These are some of the older tariffs that were in 6 years ago. So steel costs, chemical costs have not dropped because the tariffs are still on. And they're not necessarily going up, but they're still, this is an increase because other things are increasing, transportation costs and that such. Payment lower taxes, that was a reval. I'm not sure what caused it to drop that much, but that's there's a payment of lower taxes when the water company the town municipalized the assets. And so the remaining, these are the assets, the distribution, the tanks, the treatment plant, the values are reappraised. That's what we would give you for a number. I'm not sure why it's so much, but it is.
And it's
So
coming.
the water users pay that?
Yes.
It's the intent of this was to make sure that the
Taxpayer was.
It would be,
whole.
so when the company was municipalized, those assets, they were this second largest taxpayer in town. And that would have been a huge tax rate increase. So
How long is it in place for?
until it's dissolved, so it's been since 2010.
it's the consent of this board to keep the pilot in place.
So the water users are paying taxes for,
The infrastructure, yes.
For tax exempt property.
So it gets more complicated because,
yeah, no, I know, it's like,
Then the
wait a minute,
water-
it's like double billing.
so the
Like the
fire fund
buildings
is
on it.
charged for the assets, so they pay a payment to the water fund. So you'll see further down, a reduction in the charges to water fund. At one point, that was $650,000 that the water fund charged the fire fund as part of maintaining hydrants, and then turned around and the general fund charged the water fund for the hydrants. So
Sounds like, it
it's a
sounds
circle.
like.
It was
like some
complicated to
tricky
do
business,
that.
Like,
Athos
it doesn't
remembers how
sound like
complicated it
it's
was.
straight,
So-
doesn't sound like a straight line to me.
Well, my attempt is, when I get down to the reduction, is to balance the two of those, so it's a balance, so there's a charge, it's an equal. And then it's less of an issue because it's still, one's a tax, one's a user fee. If they match, then you can leave them in there, you can dissolve them both. It's up, I think the question may be, there may have to be a charter change to dissolve that. So that's a question. We don't know yet, but the idea is,
Ignored the charter before,
well, we shouldn't be doing
instead
that.
of, well, it's not the Board of Selectmen anymore, that's a charter.
This is an issue on our radar and try to address it. And I know that there is
Some logic, that's all. It
there's
just
some
feels like,
sentiment out there that those who are not on, those in Fire District 3 shouldn't be paying for the services, the expense of Fire District 1, which is the hydrant district.
Once they're equal, it doesn't matter. So that's really the question. Moving on to contracted services. Oops, sorry. We have some additional meter costs first. So we have cellular charges. As we change our meters, we have two metering systems right now. We have our new system we're putting for water meters. We have an old one that we're phasing out as we replace meters. We're about 3/4 of the way through. So as we replace one, the charge for contracted service, because it's a charge from that, is a cellular charge, will go up. So one will go up as the other one goes down. It goes down in another area, goes up in this area. We also have some fencing that we need to do around one of our pump stations for security. We've had some issues in that pump station with vandals and somebody attacking our employees there a couple of years back. So we want to make that a little safer. Water, facilities, electricity, more accurate information. PPA is being directly charged there. And then they transfer to capital fund. That's now this note here includes 94,784. So this is a little bit more complicated to explain. So our sewer rates and fees our base charge is based on meter size. So a 5/8 meter has a capacity of X gallons. Inch and a half has a capacity 3 times that. So their base charge is 3 times that. It goes up incrementally by size. The water fund, everything below 2 inches had the same rate. What we're trying to do over 5 years is to phase that in so it doesn't hit the larger users real hard all at once. So this is phasing that in over 5 years. So the rates will slowly match the same sort of format the sewer rates and fees do. We're taking the extra money, we're putting it into the reserve because it'll be more money that we would then be able to reduce our capital costs going forward.
And we're in year 3 of
Yes.
this phase.
Yes, so there'll be 2 more years.
That sounds like good planning.
It's been a while. Moving on to staffing levels, 4.5, that's 15.5 there. So we can see the two are exclusively in treatment for the most part, and then 2 in utility. And they do get cross-trained. So we do have some cross-training, not so much in treatment, but obviously in distribution. And we do have right now a grant-funded intern, which may or may not continue further than this year. But what funding might be available. No changes in staffing, reductions or realignments there. Next slide. We have 4 treatment modules, 4 treatment trains, and every 10 years we replace modules in those. So we rotate 1 train at a time. And it's 1 year, then maybe it's 2 years later, then another couple years later. So you'll see this happening 3 more times. We made this maybe the 3rd time. So we have 1 more, I believe, after this. And it replaces the filters, essentially those cylinders that looks like spaghetti inside. That is the physical straining. The air compressor is what provides the air scour to those. That gets replaced. We have some pressure reducing valves. We have several high pressure zones in the system that flow to lower elevations. Up on Balch Hill in particular, we have a couple on Grass Road, one in McDonald and one at Kemper Common, where if we didn't have them, the pressure would blow the pipes out of the houses downstream. And same thing up on Balch Hill. When they built the tank at an elevation where there had been 3 more roads above the low road. So the tank had to be high enough to serve those roads. So the tank is substantially higher than it needs to be. So if you ever replace that tank, you move the elevation down, save pumping costs, save pressure reducing costs, save a lot of energy, but that's
not the one that we're
gonna pay.
That's the one we have to pay now. But
It's still way
paint is
cheaper.
way cheaper than replacing.
And can we, in lieu of a pressure reducing valve, use a power generation system that would be the same? The turbine.
Spin a little turbine.
Yeah, but the
Little hydropower
flows
thing
are, well, you could, but
Inconsistent.
you have to look at the total consumption of that zone. It's not a lot, so it would not pay for itself. You could.
Or should we be adding 2 more roads up there?
It's I think it's all in
Conservation now?
Conservation.
Yeah.
It's a,
Make Bernie did it? No, it would be.
no, it's
It would be,
Dartmouth owned it, so I'm not sure what
I don't know who
the
owns it.
restricted.
I've often wondered.
It was Dartmouth that owned it initially.
I'm not sure what the restrictions, whether we can actually move the tank down, because we have a right of way up,
Yeah.
and it goes up the hill, then it turns horizontally, goes up the hill again.
Oh, yeah.
It could be on a horizontal
Yeah.
pace, closer to the road, way cheaper.
I would just, it's probably Appalachian Trail Quarter.
It's way beyond that. The tank is closer to the Appalachian Trail. It'd be nice to move it further down. From
I'll
Appalachian
add
Trail.
that too. Let me think. Okay. Jenny, It's on your list of things to do. Athos, if you want to take it on.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe Jarrett.
You're still with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have
I'm here, paying attention.
rising costs is an issue, and staff shortage experience. I suspect we have an internal candidate that may move from utilities to another position potentially, so we could be trying to fill multiple positions. And training is always an issue with these sort of positions. Either you get somebody that's been there for 25 years and then filling that position again it takes a certain type of person who want to do that sort of work, and it's hard to find. But I think we've found that oftentimes finding somebody who has potential and willing to start at the bottom, learn, is better than trying to hire somebody who's got experience, but comes with all the baggage and not necessarily give you any better service. So that's really kind of what we're doing now. It's training. So we do have some to deal with all these different things with maintenance, and that's really due to projects. Once that project's done, we suspect, so we have in a capital budget to do another project in a few years. So that project will done, we'll have another project. So even though the staff is not doing the project, they're involved because the water gets shut off, gets turned on, there's impacts when you turn valves that contractors are working. So there's quite a bit of effort they have to spend doing that. Regulations are not getting any easier. We spend a lot of time chasing new mandates and regulations.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you guys, not that you have a crystal ball, but if you foresee like more regulations around fluorocarbons or.
Yeah, emerging contaminants are something that we anticipate will continue to come at us. We're fortunate that our supplies are in watersheds that are either fully protected or mostly protected with low density. So we don't see the sort of issues that you would have with a well system or someplace that had a lot of development around it. So we aren't faced with the same sort of things that Lebanon might have where they draw out of Mascoma River, which that's Mascoma Lake, which has failing leach fields and cyanobacteria and other things. So we have few of those sort of issues, but we still have to deal with do we have PFAS? PFAS can be airborne. Somebody burns something in PFAS and it falls out wherever it falls out. So we have those sort of issues. We find even along roadsides, you find that the soil's contaminated along the side of the road. If you were to dig them out, they would consider it oftentimes they're hazardous, even though they are on the road. And so you have so many restrictions that you can and can't do. So those are the sort of things we always anticipate something's going to happen, but you can never tell. Like PFAS jumped on all of a sudden. We'd heard about it, then suddenly it's a regulation. We couldn't even pass for it.
Still? I thought they got rid of it.
No, New Hampshire has the most strict regulations for PFAS in the country.
Yeah.
It had it before EPA even was talking about it. We had very strict regulations, partly because of the down by Goban Plastics down in Merrimack.
Yep.
Where they were contaminating everybody's well with PFAS. So got on everybody's radar. So they put a fairly strict limit and they start looking. It's like, my goodness, it's everywhere. And I mean, literally everywhere. And everything you touch, it's there. So while it's still being manufactured, we're going to keep finding it. So that we're fortunately, we don't see a lot. We don't see any in our drinking water. See it in our wastewater, but we don't see it in drinking. So that's one positive. So we are actually, we do a lot of cross-training of our staff. So we see a lot of being short staff actually helps us sometimes. Now we have people in highway that are willing to do a lot more stuff in utilities than we did before. So we have a lot of good cross-training. So that's given us some opportunities. So even there's always a silver lining in that. So we're taking advantage. And next slide. Okay, moving on to detail.
The water use charges are increasing 11%. How much of that's volume versus price, you know?
Some of that is volume. Some of that is due to our phase of making sure our rates are high enough when we pay our bonds back. So we have a little bit of increase there.
As well as the phasing of the meter,
Right, that's
so
part of
that's
that.
95,000.
Yeah.
So that has an impact too, which I calculated, but I don't have it in front of me.
And is it the changing of meters doing a better job of capturing what people are using, and so you're seeing an increase?
It's yes, the current meters do a good job for the most part, except when they failed. A lot of them have failed, so they don't do anything. So it is doing better, but also allows the customer to see what they use. So you can see you can log in for an account and you can set limits. So if you have a leaking toilet, it'll tell you, hey, you get a problem here. So rather than you get your water bill in 3 months and wait, I didn't use all this water. Well, if you had checked your meter, you could see that something is running all the time. So it has actually added benefits as well, that customers can see what they use. So it is a good tool, but we are seeing when the old meter system was working, it did a good job. But what happens, they just stop transmitting. So when we take out a meter and replace it, the data is correct, we just can't get it. So we've had to phase some of that in. We've had some issues with that when we first started having the batteries fail in those, is that we'd find somebody who'd underpaid, and we'd find people who had overpaid. So we tried to do an ease in so that if you'd underpaid, we're gonna call it square. If you overpaid, we'll give you credit. So we've given the benefit of the doubt to the ratepayer. And it's not a huge number, but it's individuals it can be. But by and large, it's been a pretty successful thing. We're doing this all in-house, staff changing it as time allows.
So are we seeing an uptick in recorded usage for water?
No, actually not. We see, actually this winter has been some of the lowest recorded usage we've seen historically, water system and sewer. We've had some sewer flows that like.
Everyone's good out of town.
They must have, I'm not sure where they're going. Maybe they can see what they use and they're afraid to use it.
I'll interject that right now, the way this is calculated, it's between rate and volume, it would be 7% increase, and then the additional 4% comes from that phasing of the increases.
Any questions on this section?
The designated fund balance, do you know?
That's a
valid
valid question.
Valid question.
I do, just let me pull it up really quickly. And again, these are preliminary estimates, but for the water fund, I am forecasting undesignated fund balance of $2.3 million, which is equivalent to just under 29%. So that gives us a great deal above where we have to be, or where the guidance is.
Is that helpful in as we get into this additional capital projects?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we had done in the past is we would draw from the fund balance, draw from extra reserves to pay down initial loan payments so that we could do the long-term debt service. So that's a strategy that we've used. We did that for sewer, one of the projects back in 2008, I believe.
Good questions on water? No. Okay. Seeing none. All right. Thank you, Pete. Should we move on to your last enterprise?
Yes, water reclamation. This is everything that goes down the drain, these guys treat.
Okay.
Sometimes stuff shouldn't go down the street. So it's quite a science. I mean, if you've had the tour, you know it's not just a
Peter, deep dive.
yes. So we have a good group of people. We have one person retiring in 2 weeks. So we'll have to fill 3.
No, 17.
Yeah, I don't know. Next week. Yes, next week. Holy cow. It was 3 weeks when we put this together. But next week, so we'll be down 1 staff member. It typically takes somebody without any training 3+ years, closer to 4 years before they fully come up to speed on how things work. We will also be having the construction start this spring. And we'll have a new treatment process. So we'll have to learn, all the people there will have to learn a new process. It's not completely new in the fact that it's really one part of the process that's changed. The rest of it stays the same. It's just some of the aeration section and part of there's some recirculation materials, and there's some other things they have to do that are completely different than they are treating now. So that'll be a new training process for the group. There's some added costs for that training, as well as some of the expense we'll see. We will see energy costs go up because there's a lot of large pumps that are recirculating material. So pump running is, if we could recapture that, would be nice, but we can't really do that. So this, moving on. This is a group. We have Christina and Kevin, who's been there for 20+ years. 5 more years at least, he's telling me. Albert, he's his rare heir apparent. Albert's fine. We have awesome guy, just got his grade 4 license, which is, the plant is currently a grade 3 plant. And that's a treatment level we require. Grade 4 is equivalent to a college's degree in biology plus 10 years of experience. So this requires a lot of knowledge, and because you're dealing with biology, chemistry, mechanical, you have all these mechanical devices, pumps and controls and things, and you get electrical controls and stuff. So it's pretty sophisticated. Each of these folks there specialize in different areas. So we have like a treatment person who may specialize in the process, somebody who may specialize in the mechanical side, somebody who's maybe has more electrical background. So trying to balance that load and get people to fill those shoes it's very difficult. But we've got a good group now. We'll have, like I said, we'll have Richard retiring in a bit more than a week. So obviously our job is to make clean water so that the river is clean. So that's what they strive for. And then with that, we have the multiple year upgrade process, and it would be starting to train the staff. And we also finally have our NPDES permit renewal. And that's something that came with a whole bunch more testing. So you'll see some of the costs go up, and that's requirements that we had an individual permit. Now we have called medium general permit. And they have added some new requirements. Some of them are still quite figure out. So one thing we have to look at the discharge and see if the odor and the color or anything looks off. Discharge is 800 feet out of the river. We asked the EPA, they said, give some binoculars. Like, so I have a smell, but I can smell Futurama. So we don't know how some of those things are going to happen because we can't see that far out. You like out 800 feet in the water. I couldn't tell where that is. Well, we could put a buoy there, I suppose, but you won't be able to see color. You won't be able to see sheen. We have stuff coming down the river all the time, which isn't from us. So that's an area that I think we'll have a little bit of struggle. This year, we're going to be replacing the methane boiler, and we have some chemical feed pumps, and we have some ventilation. One of our pump stations we have to upgrade. We have a few things. These are things we want to do it in addition to the upgrade. Is we have some internal things that we have to do while they're doing the upgrade. We had to increase some of our solids handling. We had some issues with some of their equipment, which by doing that, we can reduce our sludge disposal and chemical usage. So those are things we're trying to look at. We are incorporating a work order asset management, the CMMS, computer management, maintenance software. That's what I spoke about earlier, about talking about highway and facilities. And this is perfect timing where we have some new people coming in. We can do SOPs, we can document things better. Some of the work that Christina and her interns have done will set us up so that we have a lot of good base work to do. And that's one of the goals, is to start incorporating that and bring that in this year. And we have, when Albert was hired as the IDP coordinator, all our industrial pretreatment discharge permits had expired from all our users. So we had to go out and renew them all. And we're getting close to being caught up and everybody re-permit. We have a few stragglers, a few when they were struggling, but I won't tell you who they are. And let's see, moving on to the overall budget. We have the increase in personnel is the back charge. Instead of being back charged, it's being charged directly. Those two utility folks charged here. So that's why you see that up. We'll go into the operational costs, why that's down, and you can see and I believe that is the same thing. We have a sewer study, not unlike the stormwater study that was funded last year in the operations budget. Moving on. We have a few things that are increasing. We have some additional costs with the maintenance software for the new process. So we are setting ourselves up so when the new process comes into operation, that we are already set up for that. That's the first line. And then we have the back charge, direct charge instead of back charge of the utility crew, including their overtime, as well as a flex benefit plans, directly charged there instead of back charge, including Social Security and the other additional items down to workers' comp. Additional professional development for the new hire that we will have, as well as to start some training in the new process. And then you see reduction of charges from the general fund. That's the reduction by removing the back charge of the overtime and regular time and other benefits for the two utility crew. Professional service, that you can see that drop. That is the sewer collection study I was just discussing. That's no longer, that's in this year's budget. We're not asking for it. Next year would be the following year. We have another study. The second phase of that study would be going through the CIP committee. Then we get into sludge disposal. We see a significant increase in that. The price has gone from 105 to 200 a ton, which is an issue for us. We're looking at other options. There are other options. They're hauling different locations, but we're looking at other locations that we can potentially dispose it and potentially beneficially reuse it. But that's something that we have to address. One of the issues is PFAS. And that PFAS is concentrated in sludge and it's concentrated in compost. So there's levels that we have to be aware of. And we have additional testing in our sludge quality certificate. Will require additional costs for that too, because of the additional chemical testing we have to do. Moving on to some of the pump station.
Yeah, just on the, you've got sludge disposal. You also have a comment there about landfill further down under contracted services.
Yes.
That's not sludge.
So there's two separate things. So we have in the process is the headworks where everything comes in. There's what they call a bar rack that pulls all things that really can't be processed. That's the plastics, things that are essentially trash that can't be.
Diapers, rags.
Things that shouldn't be going down the drain. That gets pulled out, that gets
The
landfill.
landfill. Got it.
So that's separate because it's charged separately too. It's a cheaper price too. So one thing that's going to happen, so our sludge disposal costs potentially will go down once the new process comes in because that uses organics that we're currently having to dispose in part of that process. We have it needs a carbon source. So the bacteria that we grow, we have the nitrifying bacteria, what we'll end up being able to basically grow in the aeration basins. We can't do that on purpose now because what happens is we can't settle those out. We end up having solids go out to the river. So the new process will allow us to grow that nitrifying bacteria, which then need carbon to help the process. So we'll see some of that come down. So that's something we don't know yet until we actually start running that. So there could be some savings there. So there may be some silver lining to that. Moving on to the operation repair and maintenance, we have some repairs to pump station 5 aeration, ventilation. It's failed there, so we want to make sure those things work. And we have some chemical feed pumps that need repairing right now. We have an overhead door in our garage. We've had some issues with it. The controls and the cabling failed last year, almost landed on somebody. Fortunately, he nearly missed him. But those doors are pretty heavy and they have seen better days, so we're looking to replace those. You can see the landfill costs going up. We have to buy additional analyzing equipment to basically do more testing as part of our permit, and we have an existing piece of equipment that's has to be replaced every 5 to 10 years, and that's being replaced. And one thing that we have in here is a contingency to contract out part of our lab work, because part of the upgrade is to renovate the lab. So we can't do lab work and we have no lab. So they're talking about either providing us a trailer that we can do lab work on, or we can take some of those things, outsource them. Some things we have to do in-house and we may be able to find a different location within the facility, but other parts of it, it's probably in our interest to outsource those just because it'd be very difficult. And it would be a huge cost to the project, and it's far cheaper to do some of this contracting.
That's in the new permit testing requirements or different?
During construction.
During construction of the project.
The lab has to come offline.
Yeah. Sorry, just which line is it in?
It's 4,500.
Just off. Oh, thank you. It has, yeah, I see it.
Yeah, and then
It was off my page.
we then also have a fire alarm system at the wastewater facility that needs to be replaced. This is the theme there. So we have some new chemicals that we have. Part of the lab chemicals are also some of the treatment process. We need to increase some of the chemical usage to do certain types of testing. Reallocation of electricity to more represent the actual usage there and the PPA cost charged directly to the water reclamation. You can see the oil heat up. We're replacing the methane boiler. The methane boiler is used to heat the digesters, which reduce our sludge levels. So we want to keep doing that. Otherwise, our sludge level goes substantially higher. So we'll have to increase our fuel usage so we can continue to heat those digesters while we're replacing that boiler. And we had a camera that we had for cameraing our lines so we can see deposits and issues inside lines. And we bought that out of this year's budget. So we reduced the budget by that much. Staffing levels, 6.5 are in treatment, 6.5 Christina again, and then with the two utility positions. So that's the realignment, and you can see the overall cost impacts. Moving on to the capital expenses, we have the methane furnace, and we're replacing our utility. It's actually it's the vehicle that Christina drives. It's scheduled to be replaced with an EV. We just replaced that first one last 2 Fridays ago. I drove to Concord without knowing how it works. I had somebody with me who knew how it worked and drove with the heat all cranked up and used most of the battery. Almost didn't make it back, so learned a lesson the hard way.
I don't know, EVs have been pretty hard this month.
Now that I know how to manage that, it worked pretty well. I went down the next day.
Just
Just
for
like
a
Russ,
hot
wear a
minute.
Yeah.
Just use the heated seat and
That's what.
have the air
Well, that's what you do, because you can make it just a
So-
person
so
driving. It's like, oh,
frustrating.
I'm just gonna do this. Well, that's what we have planned on. So
You're
we have,
driving a Tesla.
so we do have a plan. We have a transition plan for our fleet, and we have a set of metrics that Wesley and I look at when it comes time to look at vehicles. How we could transition any of our fleet to that. There are other vehicles that are DPW vehicles that could be transitioned. For instance, the parking truck. There's a travel car for fire, for police. There may be some other vehicles over time that can be moved to EVs.
Why does parking need to have a truck? for cones or something?
They do an unusual amount of maintenance and repair in-house, sign installation.
Yeah, you know what, I'm micromanaging, I'm gonna shut up, sorry.
So there's so we have a process to see what can come online and make sure that we have the resources. We have some charges at DPW we put in, so we can charge them there, but if we end up putting them in another department, we would put the charges there too. So I think we have some coming up in a couple of years, or maybe next year, I think, down of wastewater, it could be changed too. So we're looking at different options, and we're looking at how we can incorporate them and when we can incorporate them, what the best time is. And it's not just EVs, we're also looking for some of the larger vehicles. Can we transition those to newer fuels? What our options are. There are some electric heavier equipment. They tend to be extremely expensive. Battery life is too short for the most part, and you need level 3 or rapid chargers to charge them, and they're very expensive. So we really have to figure out how to manage those. And then we have the whole issue of when you charge them and where you store them. If you store them inside, what do we need to make sure that they're safe and not, particularly construction equipment. So we're not putting vehicles in an area that could potentially cause a fire or something. So those are all things that we factored into that. Moving on, challenges. We see the regulations for wastewater act, which is ironic. It's much more difficult to meet the wastewater regulations than the water drink. The amount of effort to clean water to discharge versus to drink is remarkable. Not that I want them to make it as difficult water treatment, but there's one person overseeing that is like 50 people in wastewater. And everything you do gets under a microscope, and it's pretty detailed. Granted, you're dealing with much more hazardous things, you're dealing with other things that are more technical for the most part. So I can see why, but there's a lot more effort in testing and training, material costs. There are a lot of the materials we have to purchase from our chemicals, for instance, polymers. They don't make the base product in the US. So we have no choice but to buy it from wherever we can get it from. It was an issue during COVID where it wasn't being shipped. Now it's being shipped, but it's shipped with a tariff. So we're faced with those sort of things. So then the big thing is we still have to stay in compliance while we have a contractor tearing things apart and moving things around and taking things offline, making sure they don't take things offline that we need to keep online. Operating a part of the system while they're working on the same part of the system, that's going to be tricky. So that's going to be, it's about 2 years for them to go through that whole process. That's what we anticipate that whole process is going to take a couple of years just to get through all the delicate things and just because of the complexity. That is a big issue for that. We'll have to, obviously we have a loan coming up when that loan gets paid, so we know we have a rate increase and landfill costs. That's an issue. Landfill licensing is an issue. Some of the legislation is looking at preventing expansion, preventing new landfills, which is going to be a bigger issue than just sludge. It's waste disposal, period. May have having to go out of the region. So that's an issue for everybody. Some opportunities. A CMN program, which we haven't, this is the perfect time with staff changes, somebody leaving a position, documenting it. This is a tool to document. So that's something we're excited about.
So what is CMS?
Computer management and maintenance software. So it's work order, asset management. It's a fancy word that you can, I had to look it up first time somebody uses it. What the heck is that? I came up with all kinds of other acronyms. Not that. One of the acronyms are the funniest ones. I remember when I took over the recycling program, they had us charge OCC. And I couldn't figure it out. I thought it was organized crime charge. It was old corrugated cardboard. Somebody had to straighten me, but so you never know. So our office and a laboratory are pretty, in our staff space is pretty dated. So this will be, they're excited about that. So that's something that they're pretty excited to see that happen. Okay, moving on.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yes. honestly, as we go through all your departments, it's like a tour de force. It's, it's recycling, it's spot energy prices, and that's slip lining and sludge, and it's,
We cover everything.
yes. Great. Might be a question for Ellen, but undesignated fund balance and wastewater, you knew I was gonna ask.
Yes, and let me pull it up, but also before I give you that number, I did misspeak on the water. The for the water fund, it is just under 29%. That is a correct number, but the actual projected undesignated fund balance is 668,000. So the strike out the 2.3 million.
Okay, all right.
There goes the project's worth it.
For sewer, projecting a balance just under $1 million, so 960,000, and that equates to just under 30%. So again, well over what the guidance is, but for good reason.
Thank you. And questions on wastewater? Thank you so
When you
much.
get the lab van, is it gonna look like the Breaking Bad?
It's a thing. A lot of people are looking at Airstream things like that.
I
Go with the OCC thing. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
What's the trailer, office trailer rental company?
What's that?
What's the construction trailer?
I don't remember the names.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Very much.
It's a lot of work.
Thanks, Christina. Okay.
Sure, and just before we go, and you guys may want to take a break before we look at more numbers, but I did want to just really quickly kind of lay out our next steps for the budget process. I had sent the list to Rob. I have sort of a proposed schedule that I think fits
Thanks.
well with, the schedule that we have laid out, but we may need to shift things around. So really the next area of focus is a deep dive on the 2027 revenue. We really need to put our heads together on not only the general fund revenue, but then also really fine tuning water, sewer, and parking. I know during the parking conversation, there were some questions that came up. So revenue is our next really big focus. Another very important piece of the equation is developing an assumption for the net assessed value change. And, sort of what we want to put into the calculation, ultimately getting to the municipal tax rate. And speaking of that, just sort of starting to calculate that first pass municipal tax rate and the rate increase. Another really important component is fine tuning the projected June 30th undesignated fund balance. We discussed some of the preliminary numbers, but fine tuning those. And then within the proposed budgets, identifying potential candidates for the use of fund balance. Certainly in keeping with the select board, your balance policies, but taking a look at what are those one-time potential investments that we could identify to use fund balance for. And then a discussion of current and proposed debt burden. I will put together basically a workbook that'll show you the phasing of our current debt, when it falls off, and the potential for rolling on of the new projects that we already have authorized. So the 8 million and the 22.8 million, those pieces for water and sewer coming on. And then presenting the consolidated budget scenarios where appropriate for consideration. I know that was one thing that we did last year, where we kind of had levers that we pulled. So we said, well, if we use no fund balance, we would end up at an tax rate increase of 5%. But if we use fund balance, it's down to 3%. Those kinds of presentation of the scenarios to then end up with a finalized budget in the public hearing. So.
For the second meeting in March.
Okay, so the second meeting of March is like,
Is that? You mean?
yeah, but today is the, what do we get, the 9th, so 9 plus.
The 16th.
So it's 16, because we're off.
Yeah.
And I've laid it out, a schedule, and Rob and I will take a look at that. So.
Do we, kind of extending that out to April? Like when we need to sign off on the warrant, that's like a month in advance? I think you told me this before, but I didn't write it down.
I think it's technically 2 weeks, but you need to have your budget, any bond hearings 30 days in advance of time at the latest. We'll map this all out for you.
But our next meeting is the 23rd, February 23rd, right?
That's correct.
So are you anticipating that some of these elements will be up at that time? Yep.
I mean, I have just sketched out, was, definitely a review of the revenue assumptions, a discussion of the net assessed value, and then a discussion of the undesignated fund balance. So start to really dig into those.
Great, good, thank you. We want to take a 5-minute seventh inning stretch. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, all right.
So good, so good.
Has anyone seen the Gail Young movie?
brief delay, but we needed it. So let's get back to second quarter financial updates. Ellen Bullion has prepared an extensive memo, which actually dovetails nicely with some discussion we just had. But Ellen, are there key points that you want to bring forward for our attention?
Yeah, and what I wanted to do was just say, the whole packet, the detail is here. It was in the select board packet. And if you guys have any specific questions, either stop me or we can talk about them at the end. But really, overall, just wanted to give really a high level overview of the year-to-date performance. And, the important thing is that through December 31st, my overarching conclusion is that I don't really see any red flags in our performance compared to budget. And, one of the things that comparing revenues and expenses that are uneven to cutting your budget in half, essentially, spreading the budget evenly, it leads to variances, and we have them on both sides of revenue and expenses. And a great example is property taxes, where we've recognized all 13 million of them. But we definitely have eyes on revenue categories where we are have a variance. We don't expect to have a variance at the end of the year, but the planning and zoning building permits are not at 50%, but that's not an area of concern. On the expense side, again, we do all the allocations between the funds right at the beginning of the year. And if you look at the ambulance fund, that really stands out, that their expenses are, I think, down to like 13% or something. But also, took a look at seasonal expenses such as paving and the winter maintenance. And, all of those large numbers look good. I don't have any concerns. I think that, as I mentioned in the memo, our largest expense is our personnel costs. And across all the funds, we have just over 51% of the compensation budget remaining. There are a handful of accounts where we have less than that 50% remaining. Taking a look at the fire fund and wastewater benefits, they're lower than that 50%, but we do provide the health savings account deposits right at the beginning of the year. So that's 100% at that point. And then, as we've discussed, we did have a larger than anticipated adoption of the Lumina plan, where again, we have the very healthy health savings account deposits. So I think overall, when I look at both the wastewater and the fire fund budget to actuals, I'm not concerned about where we'll land at the end of the year. And then another thing that I really wanted to call out was in the fire fund, the wages and salaries only have 48.5% remaining, but that category includes the overtime. And so the big driver there for the fire fund is the fire suppression overtime. We only have 37% remaining. And we've had some individuals out on short-term disability, some other factors that drove the overtime. But again, the overarching fire fund, I'm not concerned, where we are today compared to budget. I think, our next quarterly analysis will come, it would be at the end of March. I'll be taking a look at our performance at the end of each month at this point, because really we won't close the month of March till about mid-April. I'll want to have a better sense for whether we do have any concerns about the performance compared to budget that might impact the undesignated fund balance for the budget process. But again, I don't anticipate that. We can't anticipate everything, but I think that that's kind of will be the timing. And then we'll have, again, a similar analysis once we close the third quarter.
Excellent.
That's where we are. Do you have any specific questions or?
So short-term interest looks like it's doing quite well. So, and I know there's uncertainty there, but maybe that comes in above budget.
Yes, and certainly, you know, I think that positive performance again will impact the undesignated fund balance and will contribute to it. Yeah, that is one of the things that I'm working on right now. I mean, if I had a crystal ball, right? But I think that we can count on rates being below what we've seen the last couple of years. I think our most of our free cash that's invested right now or that's put to use, I think we're at about between 3.5% and 3.75% earning. So we're definitely below the 4%. So, you know, it has been a great benefit over the last several years and probably diminishing a little bit.
And the line above that, state of New Hampshire, which I think is Farms and Meals, that's also tracking very high. Is that likely to come in above budget?
So what's interesting about that is that, and this is compared to the approved budget. So it is coming in above budget, but that's the line item, one of the line items that we adjusted when we set our tax rate. So we knew that Meals and Rooms was going to be $204,000 above the $1 million that we budgeted. So that, although in comparison to our approved budget, as far as a favorable impact and carryover to the tax rate, that's already been taken into account. And where you see that, interestingly enough, is on the bottom line, where our budgeted property tax levy was 13 million. And in the end, you know, we are 13, almost 13.2, and our actual property tax revenue is 12.9. And that's because as a body, the decision was made to return that additional revenue to the taxpayers in a reduction to the tax rate.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Other questions for Ellen?
Jared, he's awake.
Jared, okay.
I don't know if you have anything. We can just see.
I don't. The only thing I had, well, I guess I do. I remember when the ambulance, during their budget presentation, they mentioned something about Medicare reimbursements and how there was potentially some risk there. And I know you mentioned that some of that hadn't been booked until the end of the period or something, but is that something that we should be concerned about?
I don't think it's something to be concerned about compared to budget. Again, in Hanover, in excess of 75% of our ambulance runs are either Medicare or Medicaid. And so they're fixed reimbursements. So, you know, working with Mike Gilbert, just taking a look, they basically how we're budgeting for 2027 is we are seeing about a 3% sort of volume increase year over year. But it's a great question. And again, as far as next steps, refining those revenue numbers is going to be really important.
Okay. So it's already built into this, basically. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. This is extremely helpful. Appreciate the evolution of this over time.
We're getting it standardized and then we can make any updates that anyone would like to see.
Perfect. Thank you. Rob, we'll turn next to social service agency funding discussion.
Yeah, so this was on the agenda for the last meeting. It's customary for the board to discuss the recommendations from staff. I put forward my recommendation revising in this submittal the tri-county cap proposal so that it's consistent. The text is consistent with my recommendation. At this point, unless directed otherwise, we will bake this into the budget as we move forward. And we don't need to decide it today. We can decide it when we have the full budget. And my recommendation is based in part by what we're seeing at the federal and the state level. Pressure on these nonprofit organizations providing more service for less. All of these have demonstrated providing direct service to the Hanover community.
I for one would certainly support that sentiment. I still have questions around Tri-County. So I wonder if we can't finalize that as part of the larger discussion. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay, right. Okay. Thank you. Let's move on then to the Dresden School District tax rate shortfall. We have a from Teresa. I know Ellen and Ryan have both been on the receiving end of some of this discussion and in concert with our legal counsel. Do you want to introduce this briefly?
Sure. I'm happy to try to.
It's a pretty big deal.
It is it's a big deal. As you may, as I've updated the board previously, the school district, when they filed the November information for the tax bill, failed to address component that basically created an underassessment of $366,000 on the Hanover bill. And the school district the school board will be meeting this week to vote on whether or not they request the select board to seek a waiver from DRA to amend the June bill. So once that request has been filed with this board, we will present it to you. And the board, I'm recommending to take it under advisement, make a decision. That decision be based in part, if you were to move forward with amending the June bill with a public communications plan developed in concert with the school district and the town to ensure that everyone's clear as to what's happening and why.
So in like, for the viewing public, can we have like the soundbite of, so essentially there was an error that affects, it's about 8 cents on every 1,000 of your assessed value, right?
8.37.
8.37 cents. So if you have $1 million home, you will see an $837, no, it's not that much. It's $83 increase in your tax bill. Because the school district didn't quite get the right paperwork filed in a timely fashion. And so we're being asked to help correct this mistake. Is that fair? Do I understand this correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the unusual part here is that DR has no mechanism to allow for this request if it's not at least 15% of the net assessed value, and the error doesn't rise to that level. So the waiver must be made by the select board. And the more difficult conversation, I think, relates to who's paying the bill. This is a 20, I'll let Ellen explain it.
No, so my understanding is that with this waiver, that the DRA has a mechanism to assign a portion of the taxes for the June bill to 25 tax year, the tax year that's already closed. So it won't impact the dollars going forward.
But the people paying the bill may not have been the owners of the property.
Oh, correct, yeah.
In fiscal year.
Yeah, because as properties change hands.
Okay. So communication is going to be critical. And our community generally is incredibly supportive of our school district. And so it needs to be made clear by the school district that the select board, should they grant the waiver, is graciously fixing this, but it's not because of the select boards. Or is that,
I don't understand what our role is in this. Could you,
And I can, what's interesting about it is interesting that the select board has to make this request, given that you don't oversee the schools. But it's,
their budget?
right, or their budget, but it's, so if, I spend quite a bit of time with our DRA advisor, she's great. But basically, the school board needs to make a request to the select board that you send a request for a waiver to the DRA commissioner.
Ellen, why do we have to do that and not the school board?
It's the rule?
It is, and it's, I can tell you the RSA.
Okay, fine. So that's the rule.
Yeah,
I
it
can buy
is.
that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I agree with you, it's a little curious. I think it has to do with the fact that the select board signs the tax warrant, the
Yeah.
overarching
Yes, I
tax
think
warrant
that
that
is- yep.
includes so. Yes,
But the
So what,
fund-
oh, go ahead.
the funds will go to the school district, the shortfall of 300 some odd thousand. And it saves them from having to cut their budget by that amount.
Which they said was like 3 teachers and. So,
and what caused it, you may already know, is the numbers that were submitted to the DRA excluded the warrants. And because of the way the school budget is created in sort of a core and then the warrants, it just didn't get consolidated. So it's not as if there was a math issue or error within the core operating budget. It was just that the operating budget plus the warrants were not just the operating.
So the main budget article, warrant article was submitted, but then the additional middle school sports and the teachers contract or the support staff contract, so those, which add up to the 360, were not.
So, Joe, did we get a formal request? Didn't seem like it from this letter.
No, it's coming.
Okay.
My expectation is it'll be this letter, but an endorsement from the Dresden schools.
Okay.
And I did follow up with Teresa today to let her know, because I reached out to Jamie Dow again today, and she said the request must come from the school board,
Yeah.
not from Teresa.
No, and so they're voting on it this
Okay,
week.
thank you.
Dresden School Board or the Hanover School Board?
Yes.
Thank you, Ellen and Rob. Shall we move on to business requiring action, unless there's anything else on that? No, okay. So the first item is setting a public hearing for a fire and ambulance rates and fees.
I move to set the public hearing for February 23rd, 2026 to revise the FY 26 rates and fee schedule for the fire department and the ambulance division.
Second. That was weird. Second. I don't even know what
It's
it
a
is.
silent second. But it was vocalized. Yeah, thank you.
What did I say?
Any further comment here, Rob?
I just had one question. Under the proposed changes, it says the rate of $112 per hour incorporates an hourly rate of $75 per person, as well as the administrative cost. I'm sorry. Okay, I got it. But if they hold the event, it's 112 because it's the 75 plus the 50%. But if the event is canceled, then there's a different fee, right?
Now, there's a minimum fee based on hours.
Okay. If an event is canceled within 24 hours, they'll still be responsible for paying the employee at the $75 per hour, but then they don't have to pay the administrative of $37.50. Is that right?
I'll confirm that for you in advance of the hearing.
Okay. Thank you. It's not a big deal. I read it a couple times. I was like, I don't really know if I understand this.
Are we in FY26? So this is like a retroactive thing, FY26 versus FY27.
It'll be for going forward once adopted.
So like now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the balance of 26 and plus 27.
Okay.
Yep, okay. Okay, with that question yet to be determined and discussed at the public hearing itself, there is a motion on the table. Is there any further comments or questions? We are voting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, that is unanimous. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to zoning board of adjustment.
I move to approve the appointment of John E. Jane as an alternate member of the zoning board of adjustment for a 3-year term. John is awesome. Well, that was important.
Could be. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Comments or questions?
John's awesome.
John is awesome. Yes, I totally agree. John's great. Okay. All right. All those in favor?
I thought
Sorry.
we all have layers. We're moving on to doctors on the zoning board. Exciting.
Variation on the themes, probably not a bad idea.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You're not all, you're not all lawyers
Unanimous.
because there's a yoga instructor. Maybe she's a lawyer too. I don't know. Could be a lawyer and a doctor and a yoga instructor all in one.
All right. Thanks to John for stepping forward on that. That's great. Now let's move on to approval of items by consent. They are our draft minutes of the January 26th meeting. Donations for the fire department, $150 from Lynn Miller, $200 from William and Nancy Vanman. And a banner request from Chad. Unless there are any requests to pull any of those items out, we can move by consent. Is there a motion?
So
The dates on the banner are wrong.
Well,
Dates and banner.
Yeah, it says October 11th through Sunday of 2025, but that already happened.
So it's a mock-up of last year's.
Yes.
Yeah, but in the paragraph too, it says they're requesting it on the wrong dates.
Yes.
We're requesting permission to hang it over Main Street on Sunday, October 11th through the end of Sunday, October 18th, 2025. It should be 2026.
Yes. Okay. So, Rob, could we just get back to them?
Yep.
Yeah. Make sure the banner is correct.
First sentence.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that, but notwithstanding that, I think we can still move forward with the consent agenda. Joanna has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Office is seconded. Any comments, questions? No? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to select board reports. Rob, unless there are any staff reports prior to that?
there are no staff report at this time.
Here, start with you. Any,
Sorry. I got nothing to report.
okay. Office.
Nothing to report. There is a Conservation Commission 2 days from now.
Nothing to report.
Jenny.
well, we heard the CIPC, right?
Yes, we did.
The planning board was trying to figure out some long-term planning and then when they're gonna hear like talk about proposed zoning changes and then also how they're fitting in all the ongoing permit applications. So a lot of planning to plan, I guess. And then Hanover Bike Walk, heard from Carolyn today, and she's presented sort of a matrix for thinking about how to prioritize based on like safety and project readiness. For the third category, I'm blanking anyway. That was interesting. And that's all I got.
Presentations are just fun to listen to.
All right, the Hanover Finance Committee met last Thursday to discuss the school budgets. And the committee is formulating its statement, meets again this Thursday to continue its drafting work. Okay, all right. That's it for committee reports.
We do have a need for a non.
We do have a need for non-public, so this will be the end of the public meeting. Motion to move into non-public.
I move we move into a non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91:1:3, Roman numeral 2, A, B, D, E, L.
Is there a second? Joanna seconds. Roll
Jenny.
call.
Vasquez, yes.
Kellyanne, yes.
Wickham, yes.
Chamberlain, yes.
Burke, yes.
Yes, we are in non-public.